Hello again, Langley Christian School boys and girls. I'm going to read you 2 or 3 stories this week. They'll all come out separately. But the thing that I thought about for this week is that it's going to be Mother's Day on Sunday. So these stories are all going to be about our mothers, and we all have a mom. And on Mother's Day too, our moms are thinking about their moms, and we're all thinking about other moms that we have in our families, our sisters that might be moms, our nieces that are moms, our aunts that are moms, and maybe even people that are like moms to us that aren't even our moms. So I thought of reading you The 7 Silly Eaters, which is a book that's been in our library for a long, long time, and it's so well worn. There's pages that are taped up. But it made me also think, The 7 Silly Eaters, of my own family. I have a picture here, a photo of my family. And this was taken when I was in college, and I'm right here. I'm the 3rd sister. But my little sister, who is now a teacher, she was just a little girl, and I think she was 2 or 3 years old. And these are all my sisters and my brother. And I think this story, although it wasn't quite like The 7 Silly Eaters, I think there were a lot of times when, oh my mom was just making food for everybody and wondering when it was going to be her nap time. And I think there were also times when Mother's Day was a big surprise for her when we planned different things. And I think that was true in my house with my own children as well. So The 7 Silly Eaters. This you can see on the cover. There's a photo of the family with their 7 silly eaters. And I think what boys and girls like about this is the story itself is told in a rhyme. But the pictures, the details are also so good. So Marianne Hoberman wrote this story, and she does like writing poems and rhymes. She wrote A House is a House for Me. Maybe some of you know that story and have read it with your class. And it's illustrated by Marla Frazier. And I like Marla Frazier's illustrations because she has so much detail. So some of the detail you're going to look for is that there's always a dog and a cat in the pictures. And then just all the other things that are going on in this story. So The 7 Silly Eaters, written by Marianne Hoberman and illustrated by Marla Frazier. Not so long ago, they say, a mother lived, just like today. Mrs. Peters was her name. Her little boy was named the same. Now Peter was a perfect son in every way, except for one. So the first baby's name is Peter Peters. And you'll notice that the mom is playing her cello. And as the story goes along, see if you can find the cello in the pictures too. When Peter was just 1 year old, he did not like his milk served cold. He did not like his milk served hot. He liked it warm. And he would not drink it if he was not sure it was the proper temperature. But Mrs. Peters didn't mind. She was a mother sweet and kind, and when his milk spilled on the floor, she patiently prepared some more. She'd take the bottle from the shelf and chuckle softly to herself. What a silly sort of eater is my darling baby Peter. When Peter had not yet turned 2, another baby sweet and new was born. Dear Lucy, small and fair, with big blue eyes and curly hair. But long before this child was grown, she had opinions of her own. Of what she'd eat and what she'd not. She hated milk, both cold and hot. And warm was worst of all. Instead, whenever Lucy dear was fed, she bellowed for pink lemonade. Not from a can, oh no, homemade. But Mrs. Peters did not mind. She squeezed each lemon to its rind with mopping milk up from the floor and patiently preparing more. She'd take the lemons from the shelf and giggle softly to herself. What a silly pair of eaters are Lucy dear and Peter Peters. Now Lucy grew and Peter grew till he was 3 and she was 2. And who was 1? Why, little Jack. With eyes so brown and hair so black, a happy baby, never cross. But all he'd eat was applesauce. Peeling apples by the pound, Mrs. Peters faintly frowned. She'd take the apples from the shelf and murmur weakly to herself, what a silly bunch of eaters are Lucy, Jack, and Peter Peters. Peter, Lucy, and young Jack had an other brother, Mac. Mac was charming, round, and plump, but if his oatmeal had a lump, Mac would dump it on the cat. Mrs. Peters hated that. But since she loved her children she'd strain the oatmeal 2 times more. She'd take it from the pantry shelf and mumble sadly to herself, "What a foolish group of eaters are all my precious little Peters." And remember I told you about the cat and the dog in every picture. Before another year was through, who came along? Why, Mary Lou. She was a darling, sweet and bright, and had a healthy appetite. That is, as long as she was fed soft and squishy homemade bread. Poor Mrs. Peters got no rest, but she did her very best. She'd take the flour from the shelf and mutter humbly to herself, "What a fussy bunch of eaters are my lovely little Peters." A year rolled by, the children grew. "They really are a splendid crew," sighed Mrs. Peters, pinning pins and diapering her brand new twins. Little sisters quick and smart, impossible to tell apart, but Flo like poached eggs, Fran like fried, and if she mixed them up, they cried. Tired to the very bone, Mrs. Peters groaned a groan. She'd take the eggs down from the shelf and whisper weakly to herself, "What persnickety young eaters are my 7 little Peters." 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Another thing I notice is that there is always somebody reading in the books, in the pages, which is kind of nice. Now time went by, as time will do, and as it passed the children grew. The problem was that as they grew, their appetites kept growing too, but not their choice of what to eat. Each child continued to repeat. They wanted what they had before. The trouble was, they wanted more. Someone wanted bread, and they wanted their eggs a certain way, and their oatmeal, and their applesauce, and their lemonade. Creamy oatmeal, pots of it. Homemade bread, lots of it. Peeling apples by the peck. Mrs. Peters was a wreck. And here you can see her poor cello is standing against the wall. She wiped her brow and heaved a sigh. Another year was passing by. In fact, she realized with sorrow her birthday would arrive tomorrow. Drearily she shook her head, and wearily she went to bed. She thought the children had forgot her special day, but they had not. At crack of dawn, they all began to carry out their secret plan. Mrs. Peters would be fed a birthday breakfast in her bed, a breakfast made of all the foods that kept them in such happy moods. And I love the way they're scheming together. So while their weary mother slept, down the stairs the children crept, and from the cupboards and the shelves, happily they helped themselves. Cheerfully they chopped and stirred, preparing what they each preferred. But despite the pains they took, since nobody knew how to cook, to measure things or make them hot, the more they tried, the worse it got. First, Mac's oatmeal turned out lumpy, which made poor Mac grim and grumpy. In fact, the lumps got him so cross, he dumped them in Jack's applesauce. This bothered Jack so much he threw it in the dough of Mary Lou, who tossed the mishmash that made straight into Lucy's lemonade. And that put her in such a huff, she poured the icky, sticky stuff into the frying pan that held the eggs of Flo and Fran, who flung the hodgepodge on the spot right into the milk in Peter's pot. But when they saw what they had done, they wished they had never begun. They'd hardly slept a wink that night, and still things hadn't turned out right. And even though they tried their best, it hadn't worked. They were depressed. They'd be in trouble too unless they found someplace to hide the mess. The oven seemed the perfect spot. They all forgot it still was hot. They stuck the pot inside, and then they all went back to bed again. The clock struck 6, but they slept on. Meanwhile, their mother softly stepped down to the kitchen, smelled a smell. What could it be? She could not tell. It smelled so good. She sniffed some more and opened up the oven door. She woke the children with her cries. They all came running in surprise. And in the kitchen, what they found was Mrs. Peters dancing round, and in the oven, no mistake, a pink and plump plump and perfect cake. You can see the dog and the cat totally tired out from the night before as well. As their mother danced with glee, she cried, "A birthday cake for me? A birthday cake still piping hot? To think I thought that you'd forgot. Now tell me, please, how did you make this pink and plump and perfect cake? So high and light and smooth as silk?" "It's smooth as silk from all my milk," said Peter. Lucy said, "It's pink from all my lemonade, I think. And from my apples," added Jack. "My oatmeal made it soft," said Mac. "My bread dough too," said Mary Lou. Said Fran and Flo, "As for the size, it was our eggs that made it rise." Then everybody sniffed some more and danced around the kitchen floor. They put the cake upon a dish and lit the candles. "Make a wish." The children cried, "Before you blow," and Mrs. Peters did just so. And what is more, her wish came true, as birthday wishes always do. And from that day to this, it said, the Peters family all is fed. A single simple meal, just one. A meal that's good for everyone. A meal on which they all agree, made from their secret recipe. They all take turns in mixing it. They all take turns in fixing it. It's thick to beat and quick to bake. It's fine to eat and fun to make. And I love how as they're getting older, they're all doing different things. And there's Mama playing her cello. It is Mrs. Peters' birthday cake. So I can tell why this is a well-loved story, that kids just love taking this story out. And although it's a birthday story, it definitely is a good story for Mother's Day too.